Good afternoon. This is Harmon with Native Media Network. And once again, I have the privilege to be sitting next to OREN Lyons, who was just given a Lifetime Achievement Award here in Syracuse, home country. And that, I think, makes it even all more significant, and got this incredible award of the Tree of Peace that's sitting on Turtle Island. And OREN could explain a little bit more on the significance of it. But the important part is the people that were here last night and the influence that OREN has had on them over a lifetime. And each one of these people in their own way is a messenger, spreading the words of the peacemaker, spreading the words of sanity, spreading the words of developing a sustainable world that we can all live in. And OREN, thank you so much. A very well-deserved award. And if you could just say a few words about the sustainability and creating a sane world that we can all live in and make actionable in our daily lives.
Well, I would say, first thing I would say was thank you for the introduction and the fact that we're old friends who've known each other for many years now. And I do appreciate your work. Media is fundamentally important, so probably the only way we have at this point to get our side of the word out. Organized media, professional media is controlled, heavily controlled, and doesn't give us any space, as you well know. We just never get, you don't hear about us, or what they don't want us to hear. So anyways, your work is important in that direction. I'm glad to see you've developed that. You're like a chameleon, you morph into whatever it needs to be. Done a lot of things and have a lot of experience as well over these past years. Not the least of which, is your relationship with the Dalai Lama. And, you helped us to publish our book, Exiled in the Land of the Free. I mean, that was difficult. Nobody wanted to come here. And, as your chameleon role then as a publisher, you helped us to get that out. And it was a combination of a lot of people working on the issue. And I'm trying to remember the man's name who really gave us the money to do that. That was
Five Rings Foundation.
Yeah.
I think of it in a second.
Yeah, I mean, he was a great man, and he was helping the fishermen in the state of Washington. That's how I met him. They were having an event in Washington, D.C. The fishermen were making a position on the rights of indigenous people to fish the salmon. And so they had this event in Washington, D.C. And he lent his car. He had a train car.
Yeah.
I just,
Tom.
Oh, yeah. Tom.
Well,
we'll get there, Tom, but I just do want to thank you for all of your work for us and how you supported us. Where money is needed just to carry on stuff. It was just through your philanthropy and your largesse to help us. Deep morale, Tom Morale. Yeah, Tom, you're a strong part of our history, and I just want to thank you. And it's not over yet. And so it is that over these periods of time, you know, you meet so many people who are helpful, you know, that Native people, you know, have been battling to maintain their integrity as nations, and keeping their language, and, you know, fighting a fight of elimination, you know, eliminating us from history, eliminating us and eliminating our philosophy, which is basic philosophy for life itself. So all of that coming around to a situation that faces us today, which is dire. It's dire. It's here. I mean, global warming is a soft term. Warming is a soft term. You're talking about heat. You're talking about heat that India has experienced, 127 degrees. You know, old people, young children, they're not going to live, they're going to survive that. You know, even those with the full strength of maturity of a human species, you know, you probably fight that off, but you're not going to take much more of it. And so, it's not global warming, it's global heating. And it's here, and it's compounding, and it's coming fast, and it's going to be, as Chief Shenandoah or Tadadaho said very quietly one time, it's going to happen faster than you think. His words ring in my mind all the time. It's going to happen faster than you think. And so here we are today as a species, a human species, you know, as part of all the other species that I understand, you know, the latest news is that there's projected 1 million species going to be extinct. Very quickly. It's on its way out. And it's just a reminder, I think, to all of us that we are part of nature and that we are subject to the same extinction.
The species.
Yeah, the species. We're, you know, I was just saying this last night at a big event we had here. Remember John Mohawk's words, and he said, John said quietly, and we're having this kind of discussion, he said, well, you know what I think is, my observation is that the human species is still a biological experiment. And we're not doing well in that experiment. Now, why is it that we're not doing well in that experiment? I mean, we're supposedly intelligent beings. I mean, we have the capability to put man into space, and yet we don't have the capability to survive as a species. Now, what is that? I mean, how brilliant are we, in fact? Indeed. Not very. Well then, who's responsible? And what is the cause? What is, you know, you can't blame probably, well, as they said, you know, here in the USA, that wealth is now concentrated in less than 1% of the population. I don't know whether that's international or whether it's US, but that's not sustainable. No, where's the equity? Where is the equity? So the other factor is, you know, that in 1950 we were 2.5 billion people. In my lifetime, I was 20 years old then. And so now here we are. I'm now 89 years old. And it's 64 years later, 69 years later, something like that, whatever. And we're now 7.5 billion people.
Three
So within my
times.
lifetime, we've only doubled the population. And maybe we'd be okay if there was equity. But if you have less than 1% owning most of the wealth, where does that leave the rest of us as a species? You know, the situation is hard to identify or hard to make sense of in our daily life, you know, because we're involved in survival most of the time, hard, just looking for a job, just trying to get food on the table, just, you know, just basic survival. Around the world it's getting hard for everybody. And so what is it then? What is it that has brought us to this position of possible extinction, not only of those million species, but us included? I mean, I think people have to understand one thing, is that we are nature. We're not, nature isn't over there. Nature is us. We're part of nature. We're flesh, bone, and blood. And you got to deal with flesh, bone, and blood. We have intellect. Most other species do not have the intellect capacity that the human species does. All right, that's and with that intellect comes responsibility. All right, it's not rights. We don't have human rights. We have human responsibility. Get away from that idea of rights. We have responsibility, and if you don't act responsibly, you know, as you mature, you grow older, and with that maturity, you're supposed to have responsibility. But that doesn't seem to be the case, you know, especially with these less than 1% that have all the wealth. I understand that they have problems too, you know. I've heard that one of the big problems that they had is they have to wait in line for yachts now. Quite a hardship, I understand.
Yeah.
But everything's relative, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Everything is relative. So they have waited in line for a yacht, and we have to wait in line for coffee or food. And in some cases, in many cases, for water. There's people lined up carrying cans, carrying buckets, carrying pails, waiting for water.
That's the big issue as
Well,
well.
that's a fundamental issue. Water's life. Water's life. The first law of life is water. And probably the last, first and last law of life. You don't have water. You know, it's an experiment that everybody maybe should try. It's simple to do. Just say, well, I'm going to test this out. I'm going to go without water for the next 5 days. Try it out. You
Yeah,
will
you
see.
do.
You will see how important water is. Try it out and let's see how long you can last. All right? You can go 60 days, 65, 70 days without food. So how many days you go without water? So that's the situation, and water is not adjudicated equally around the world. In the northeast of the United States, the Great Lakes, shared by Canada, so we would say the northeast of Turtle Island is the Great Lakes. And in the Great Lakes we have over, I think, a quarter of the world's potable water. Here, right here. And of course, where the battles are going on today in Syria and the Middle East, water, no water. What's going on? What are you going to do? The battle there is about water. I don't want to say it, but there it is. And so who holds the spigot controls life. So this, that's just one fraction of the problems that humanity faces today, not the least of that, which is 7.5 billion people. How do you find equity? Quite a few years ago now, I'm surprised how time flies. We had a request coming from the Lakota traditional leadership, chiefs, Footscope in particular, Matthew King, Kills Enemy, Star. They came to Onondaga, the leadership, and they said, we have a big problem taking place in our country, and we need help. Try to help us. And I said, well, we need to bring peace. When you come to Onondaga, if you ask for help to bring peace, I said, we are bound to reply. Yes, they said, we need peace. I said, well, now we can try. We can put it to the council. Your request coming to help with peace. And that was done. And I went through the Seneca Nation first, and the Chief Sundown said, we have a request. It's coming through the western door, which is the Seneca Nation, to put in a Shawnee Council. People call it Iroquois. Their request, and we put it to the council, and they agreed that we should help. And we were assigned to go to see what we can do. Myself was one, and Chief Lazure, young Lazure, we were too young. We were assigned to go out and see what we could do, so we thought, well, if we go out, we should take some food and probably some kind of, at least, medical supplies, whatever we can carry. And we did. We took a caravan out there. And it's a long story, I won't go into that, but we did manage to drive through their lines and get down there and so forth. And it came to a point where firefights were taking place at night mostly. There was not much going on during the day, but at night, there were patrols on both sides moving about, and there was this little hamlet, this little Wounded Knee community, which had, in 1890, suffered a calamity where they were slaughtered. The Lakota were slaughtered, large numbers that are Wounded Knee. And here we were again now, the second time, the same thing was going on there. There was an enclave of American Indian movement people who had been asked to come in and help, and they were there. And it was quite a situation. And then we got requests to go out, so we went out. So we went and we talked with the leadership, and the leadership said, well, we need peace. We're trying to come to terms with leadership out here. The federal government's not listening. The soldiers are there. We're surrounded. We're having a battle. So what can we do? So we sent out the non-police to go out there and see what we could do. We had people there before. There were, we had 3 living. from Buffalo University, and my class actually, but they were mature women. They went out there and they were there and they were helping to organize the interior, food, education, and so forth. And so some of them men were there too. So anyway, we went out and I talked to Secretary of State Rogers, and he said at that time, don't go. He said, we're having problems out there. He said, we're really not in control of some of our forces out there. They're acting independent. And actually, he said, we have sent people out there and they have been put in jail. He said, we can't take any responsibility for it. Or your group, you go out there. And I said, well, I'm not asking for your permission. I'm just simply telling you that we're going. And letting you know that we're on a peace mission. And that we're not be carrying any weapons, that we'll be there, maybe carrying food and so forth. He said, well, would you please check in with our leadership down in they had taken over the village of Pine Ridge, and they had taken over the BIA headquarters there. That was their staging area, actually. He said, would you go talk to them? And we've got an old person who was before the head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. He said, we'll tell them you're coming. I said, sure. I said, we've got to do that. So we did. We took, three of us went to meet with him and let him know. And he said the same thing. He said, we're 20 miles away from Wounded Knee, the village. He said it's under siege. And he said there's armament there. There's APCs, armored personnel carriers. He said, and surrounding, as you know, he said, the firefighter. I said, well, we're going to try to help facilitate peace. Well, he said, I'll inform them, but I can give you no assurance that they're going to let you through. I said, but we're here because we said we would come to you, and we said we would talk to you, your Secretary of State Rogers, and we're carrying that out. And so he wished us good luck on our mission, and we drove our car, and we had problems. We had to, there were, armored personnel carriers lined up. They couldn't go through, But there was a space. They were not lined up. They were lined up kind of juxtaposed like that. So if we went this way, I could see that we could get the car through. And so, as we were driving up, and we were going through the first Bureau of Indian Affairs, there was a line of BIA police who were Native people. And they said, well, what are you doing here? I said, we're here by invitation of people. I said, what are you doing here? Who invited you here? They were a little embarrassed, I said, yeah. I said, well, we're going to see what we can do to help. We drove through that, and we hit the second line. I forget what government that was, section of government, but we went through that line, and then we finally came to the battle line, where the tanks, FBI, and they said, we have a line here, you can't go through. I said, well, we're on a mission. I said, we haven't been talked to, Secretary of State Rogers, they know we're here. I said, we're going to go through. He said, well, if you go through, we're going to shoot. I said, well, you do what you do, and we're going to do what we have to do. And he says, how do you expect to get through? I said, we get in a car, we'll go right through here. And that's what we did. We just drove through, we were kind of hunching down, waiting for the fire. And then there was a big distance between that line and then the defensive line around Wounded Knee that the Indians had set up. And when they saw this car coming down, it was us driving down, and we had food, we had bandages and so forth. So we went in. Anyway, our mission was to see what we could do to bring peace. And that, at the same time, was Marlon Brando, who had been very helpful with the Indian situation, was very active. And he had just won the Oscar for a famous, what was that? The Godfather. And so they had the big night there. And he decided that in order to bring attention to the situation of Wounded Knee, he would refuse the Oscar. And in order to do that, he enlisted a beautiful young Indian actress, Sasha Feather. And she was carrying this message, which he had given her. And of course, she was just put into this situation. But she did it. She went there, and then she was kind of on her own. I mean, she had a script, but there was no way to follow a script. It just doesn't work that way in these live situations. And she, on behalf of Marlon Brando, refused the Oscar on behalf of the people at Wounded Knee, the Lakota people there, and all the other Indian nations who had come to their support, including Six Nations. It was a momentous occasion. It was, it did what Marlon wanted to do. It brought attention to the problem. And the media had stifled all, it was a blackout. News, you couldn't find out what's going on. All that kind of blew that wide open. And from the time that we heard that they were going in, all of this, was going back to Custer Battlefield, going back to the lust for gold, the Black Hills, going back to the lust for land, going back to the immigration of Europeans to Turtle Island, going back to the doctrine of discovery, where the Pope had declared indigenous people to be something less than human. And it took us all the way to 2007 to battle that position, which we didn't even understand, for the longest time. We were relegated to the flora and the fauna of North America. Good company, mind you. The best company there is, mind you. But in the heart of the human species, we were not really recognized as human beings. Full. And that was the doctrine of discovery issued by the Pope, the Vatican, 1791 or 1491. 1493 was issued. 1 year after the so-called discovery. And that opened up the Western Hemisphere to immigration. And what the Pope said at that time was, and I'll paraphrase, he said, if there are no Christian people in this new land you've discovered, I declare those lands to be empty. Old Roman law called terra nullius, I declare telenotice to these lands. Further, if there are people, and they are non-Christians, they do not have a right of title to land. They have only the right of occupancy. The same right as a bear, or a turtle, or a deer, or Indian. They called us Indians, you know. That was Columbus' first mistake. He thought he landed in India, so suddenly we were Indians. And today we still have that discussion, you know, when we meet the people from India and say, well, you're the real Indians. That was Onondaga. But anyway, that was the situation. Sashi suffered, her career suffered after that, of course. It's just as anybody standing up for indigenous people today
Absolutely.
suffer, because the issue still stands, it's land. And they're still immigrants. Indigenous people are still the original people here. As long as we remain to be that, the question remains. But we have treaties, we have agreements. So I would say, abide them. Abide these treaties. We have, the Haudenosaunee has Continental Congress of the United States, 1775. Treaty of Neutrality, 1775. Treaty of Peace with the new United States, 1784. Again, another treaty, 1789. The Haudenosaunee, and again another treaty, 1790. Trade and Commerce Act, and again another treaty, 1794. In which case, President George Washington made a wampum belt. And the American public doesn't know that not only was the first president of the Continental Congress made a wampum belt, didn't know that your leadership was making wampum belts. Nobody knows that. But there it is. We have the belt. We have the original belt. And I think we have half of the first one from the Continental Congress. That's John Hancock. John Hancock made the first treaty belt, 1776. At Fort Pitt, Pennsylvania. Long ago. But up to that time, 300 years of issuing belts. So they knew, French knew how to make a belt, English knew how to make a belt. And that was the, I would say, that was the political currency of the time, was the process of treaty belts, which is Haudenosaunee. And not only us, but Indian nations, you know, the whole East Coast and inland used belts as commemorations of agreements, treaties, ceremonies, special, made from clamshells in the ocean. So George Washington, we have his original belt that he made, first president of the United States. Because that was, like I say, it was the political currency of the time. If you didn't have a belt, they didn't have an agreement. And so all of that brings us up to contemporary times here now. All right, we're going from a population of, I don't remember exactly what the world population was in 1774, but it wasn't anywhere near what it is today.
They didn't have a census.
Yeah, they didn't have a census, and you know, I have to say that I'm always amazed at the propensity of the European for trade. He was everywhere. Anywhere a boat could go, that's where he was, and he was willing to trade for whatever. So first with the Dutch, you know, we met them, made a treaty with them, 1613. That was a 2-year-old belt. Here's your canoe, here's our canoe, here's your ship. Go down the river of life side by side, peace and friendship. As long as the grass grows green. As long as the water flows downhill. Sun rises in the east, sets in the west. It's a long time. So here we are today. Those treaties are valid. international laws as treaties should be honored under the circumstances of the times. And they're still valid. And today, I just understand that last week we received our treaty clause from the 1794 treaty. And I have to commend the United States for keeping that promise. No ceremony, mind you, but there it is. It's an agreement they know. And I dare say I don't think anybody in the country knows much about that. But every year we get the treaty clause. 1794, peace and friendship. So we're allies, basically. We're allies. But we're not treated that way. Not Indian nations across the country. And so we are now at this juncture of survival, I would say, as a species. We have contaminated the waters of the earth. We've changed the very air that we breathe. We have unleashed amazing economic and I would say physical damage. That's our legacy to coming generations. And the question remains now today, what about us? Are we going to survive? We're now in global warming, no doubt about it.
Yep.
Global warming is on its way. It will accelerate, it will compound, and it will be here a lot faster than we think. It was interesting to me that they know this, they talk about it. Well, we got another 100 years. I said, I don't think you got 100 years. I don't think you got 50 years.
Not at the current
I
rate.
don't think you got 20 years. We're here, point of no return. So we just got an announcement from thousands of scientists around the world saying 10 years. 10 years, point of no return. And yet, at the same time, the announcement by the oil industry, the record production of oil today, record, more than they've ever done, in the face of point of no return. Now, where's the common sense? Where's the responsibility? Where's the intelligence, supposedly, of the human species? Where is that? Come on, you people out there, tell us. Look where we are. Who brought us here? And what's our destiny? Well, we've never given up. You know, we've always said that we're fighting. And we're instructed long ago, I said, never take hope from the people. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that. We're going to fight on. The Onondaga Nation just raised 2 young chiefs last week. Occasion. Young men, feisty, full of beans, ready to work, ready to go. Okay, raise more in the traditional sense. And those are leaders for peace. They're leaders for peace. So peace is there. That's our mission, that's our goal, and it's always a constant. It's always a constant.
But you're keeping the legacy going, the human legacy, the sense of respect, the sense of sustainability, the sense of just human values.
Well, you have to relate to what your mother, basically, which is what we call the earth, our Mother Earth. You know, you hear that term, Mother Earth. Well, we have a literal term. Although we knew that. We knew where that comes from. We personified all of the spiritual powers so that people can relate easier. you talk about the elder brother, the son. You know, elder brother is a powerful person. You talk about a grandmother moon. You talk about the winds, the four winds, the grandfathers. You talk about the same people personified those people. So that we can relate to them in a very practical way. And way back there when Peacemaker brought us all together in that great meeting of the Confederation, and he said to the leaders, one by one, go into the woods and tell me the first thing that you see. And one by one, these leaders went in there and said, I saw a beaver. Good, henceforth, that will be your family, the beaver. I saw a deer. Good, henceforth, your family will be the deer. I saw a wolf. Good, henceforth, your family will be the wolf. And so with 9 clans, 9 sightings. Foundational relationship to the earth. That's our family. In other words, that's our responsibility to look after the earth, to look after it, to be respectful. And it's served us well, the relationship. And the Western society doesn't have that relationship. They talk about a spiritual place like on the other side. Well, we know all about that place. We have great ceremonies for that place and a strong belief in the afterlife. We know about that place. We know about the Creator. It's old business with us. Nothing new. And we have that relationship. But you have to have a relationship with the earth itself if you're going to survive as a species. Now, you know, we've learned over time that this earth has had many cycles of life. It disappeared entirely. I remember one time we had huge animals that weighed tons. They're gone.
Yeah.
And so here we are. And we're at that point now, another species of extinction. So what are we going to do about this? Where are we? I don't know, you know, we were told a long time ago that you can't eat gold. You can eat beans and corn. you can eat things that you can't eat gold.
It's oil, temperate oil.
Yeah, amazing. So here we are, and I think that reaching out, please give me this opportunity to talk again. That the mission for us hasn't changed. That our mission is to help bring peace. And I mean, peace is a very large project. I mean, it involves not only peace between our species as human beings, but peace between the trees, peace between the fish, peace between the animals, peace between what grows. That's our relationship with the earth. That's why I'm a wolf. I remember one person talking, what's your sign, is it? They were talking about Virgo, they were talking about, and what's your sign? I said, I'm a wolf. That's my sign. That's my family. That's my brother. Now, mind you, I don't go up and try to pet a wolf. They're not pets, but they are our relatives. And so this brilliance of the peacemakers who tie us directly to the earth is what helped us survive.
All your relatives.
All our relatives, all our relations. And that's how the Lakotas finished their prayer. All our relations. That's everybody. That's every little insect. It's every little blade of grass. That's every tree. It's every fish. That's our relation. We're related. We're responsible. And we with the intellect are supposed to be helping their survival. So, are we smart enough?
That's the big question. With your influence and with your motivation and inspiration, yesterday we had 400 people here. I think everyone is going out and kind of questioning that motivation, and hopefully we can spur it a little bit more and repeat the message and get it out. Not to give up hope.
No, never.
Because when you give up hope, you stop acting. The spirit is no longer there.
Yeah. Common sense versus dollar and cents.
Well, thank you so much for your words and your motivation